You cancel the plans you were actually looking forward to. Not because something came up, not because you're sick, but because the thought of being around people, even people you genuinely like, feels like being asked to run a marathon on a sprained ankle. And then you spend the next hour lying on your couch in the quiet, and something in your chest just loosens. You breathe differently. You feel like yourself again. And then immediately after that, the guilt rolls in. What is wrong with me? Why do I keep doing this? If that's you, or if you love someone who disappears like this and you can never quite figure out why, stay with me, because this isn't antisocial behavior. It isn't depression. It isn't fear of people. It has a name, it has a real neurological explanation, and the last sign is the one that quietly costs people the most, and almost nobody ever connects it to this. What you're experiencing is called solitude hunger, and it belongs almost exclusively to people whose nervous systems are wired to process more, not differently in a broken way, more in a high bandwidth way. The psychologist Elaine Aron, who spent decades studying what she called the highly sensitive person, found that roughly 1 in 5 people have a nervous system that genuinely registers more sensory and emotional input per second than average. Not metaphorically more. Measurably more. Think of it like a Wi-Fi router running 30 devices at once versus 3. The router isn't broken, it's just hitting its ceiling faster. And when it does, it needs to reset. Alone. In the quiet. That's not a personality flaw. That's maintenance. Here's the part that matters for you right now. This isn't about being introverted versus extroverted. Some of the people who crave solitude most intensely are actually quite warm and social when they're resourced. The craving isn't for isolation, it's for restoration. Those are completely different things. And once you understand that difference, a lot of things about yourself or about the person you love start making a different kind of sense. So let's go through the signs, because this is where it gets specific. Sign 1. You don't just get tired after social events. You get depleted in a way that feels almost physical, not sleepy, hollowed out, like someone reached in and unplugged something. You go to a birthday dinner, you laugh, you're genuinely present, you're not even faking it. But driving home, there's this wave, and it's not sadness. It's more like your body is sending you a bill. You get home and you need at minimum an hour, sometimes a full day, before you feel like yourself again. People who don't experience this think you're being dramatic. They had the same dinner and they're fine. But here's what's actually happening. Your nervous system was processing every conversation, every shift in the room's emotional temperature, every unspoken tension at the table, every lighting change, every ambient noise, all of it, simultaneously, the whole time. You weren't just having dinner. You were running a full background scan on everything in the room for 3 hours straight. Of course you're depleted. You did twice the cognitive work. Sign 2. Small talk doesn't just bore you. It actually costs you energy to produce it. You can do it. You've gotten pretty good at it. But it feels like trying to write with your non-dominant hand. Technically possible, exhausting in a way that's hard to explain. While you're asking someone about their weekend, some part of your brain is noticing the way they're holding tension in their shoulders, or that the story they're telling doesn't quite match the look in their eyes, and you're quietly processing all of that while also producing the expected social response. You're doing 2 jobs at once. Always. If that's 2 out of 2 so far, keep going, because it gets more specific. Sign 3. You have a rich, almost embarrassingly detailed inner life that you rarely show anyone. Not because you're secretive, because you've learned, usually the hard way, that when you do share it, people look at you like you've said something slightly too much. You overthought that. You're too sensitive. Why does everything have to be so deep with you? So you learned to edit. You got very good at giving people the condensed, socially acceptable version of what's actually happening inside you. And you became a little lonely because of it. Not lonely for people, exactly. Lonely for someone who could handle the unabridged version. The neuroscience here is actually clarifying. High perception minds show greater activation in the insula, the part of the brain responsible for self-awareness and empathy. You're not imagining more. You're literally registering more. The inner life isn't a quirk. It's a byproduct of the hardware. Sign 4. You notice things other people walk straight past. The mood shift in a room before anyone has said anything. The moment a conversation turns, slightly performative. The exact second someone stops, meaning what they're saying. You pick up on micro-expressions, tonal shifts, the slight hesitation before an answer, and you've probably spent years wondering if you're just paranoid, because you're often noticing things that nobody else seems to register. You're not paranoid. You're calibrated differently. Your nervous system flags signal where other people see background noise. The problem is, when everything is signal, the volume never fully drops, which is why the quiet is not just nice for you. It's necessary. Here's a small thing you can actually use right now. If you're feeling that hollowed out post-people exhaustion, even 15 minutes of genuine sensory quiet, not scrolling, not TV in the background, just actual quiet, produces a measurable drop in cortisol. Your nervous system isn't being dramatic. It's asking for something specific. Give it the specific thing. Sign 5. You feel guilty for needing this. This is the one that does the most damage quietly. You've internalized the message that needing solitude is something to apologize for. So you say yes to things you know will drain you, then cancel last minute and feel terrible about it. Or you go, and you're physically present, but somewhere behind your eyes, you're already mentally in your apartment, in the quiet. Or you've built your whole schedule around sneaking in solitude without anyone noticing, because you've decided it's easier to be slightly unavailable than to explain something that sounds, when you say it out loud, like you just don't want to be around people, which isn't true. But you can't quite find the words that make it not sound like that, and the guilt compounds the drain. You're not just tired from the social event, you're also tired from managing the shame about needing to recover from it. That's the cost nobody talks about. Here's what happens if you let this run on autopilot. You slowly start shrinking your life to manage the energy math. You stop going to things that would actually matter to you because you can't afford the recovery time. You get quieter in relationships, not because you have less to say, but because the full version of you feels too expensive to produce consistently. The people who love you notice you pulling back, and they take it personally, because nobody ever explained to them that your withdrawal isn't about them. It's about bandwidth. And then you're lonely in a new way. Not just for understanding, but from the distance you've created trying to protect yourself. So here's how you start actually working with this instead of around it. First, name it to yourself. Not to manage it, but to stop treating it like a character defect. Your nervous system processes at high volume. Solitude is how it resets. That's a biological reality, not a social preference you should feel bad about. When you frame it that way internally, the guilt loses some of its grip. Second, build what you might call a recovery buffer. Before any high-demand social event and after it, protect a window of genuine quiet. Not scrolling, not catching up on things, actual nothing. Treat it the way an athlete treats warm-up and cool-down, not optional, part of the performance. Even 30 minutes on either side changes how you show up and how long it takes you to come back to yourself afterward. Third, find one person, just one, you can tell the unabridged version to. Not to explain yourself constantly, just to have one relationship where you don't have to run the edit process. That one relationship does more for your nervous system than a dozen surface-level connections. And if you're the person who loves someone like this, the one who sometimes feels shut out or confused by the disappearing, here's what's actually true. When they come back from the quiet, they come back more fully. The withdrawal isn't rejection. It's the thing that makes real presence possible. What they need from you isn't to be convinced that people are fine. It's for you to understand that the quiet is how they refill before they can give you anything real. People who crave solitude aren't running from the world. They're running toward the only condition under which they can actually show up in it fully. The world told them they were too much and not enough at the same time. Too sensitive, too intense, too internal, and somehow also too cold, too unavailable, too difficult. Both labels were wrong. What they actually are is high resolution. And high resolution systems need more processing time. That's not a limitation. That's the cost of the clarity.